Nathan Cruz here with CARLSON software, and in this video I'm going to review some changes and improvements that we've made to our auto texturing command and show you some of the new parameters and the more fine-tuned control that we've provided to you. So in my earlier video, you noticed that I had basically only saw the results of the auto texture after we applied it, so you weren't exactly sure, which areas were going to be done actually textured. So now we've provided a few more command parameters that you'll see over here to the left, and then we also now are showing a preview polyline. So, and you can see right away that I just clicked one point, and it's obviously gotten a whole lot more than what I wanted to show. So that's the effect of this slope tolerance percentage. So basically, I can trim this down to something like 3%, and then get another solution, and you see the green outline here where we're going to get our grass texture that I've picked for this. The other thing that you can do now is if you do pick a point that you get a bad result on, you can just press Control-Z and you can undo that pick. And so these are, and you can continue to do multiple areas, all within the same command. So I'm just going to pick these areas really quickly. I'll try to clean that area up here. So when you do find that you get sort of an odd result, a lot of times it's just slight fluctuations in the tin, or in this case actually sort of an error in the tin. Instead of fixing it, I'm just going to pick a couple of points around in there so that I clean up that texturing result. And now I can kind of go around and inspect my grass texture in here, and I can see probably on this back side I'm going to want to put some grass in on that too. Come back around, drop in some grass there. This is probably also going to be grass, so I'm going to extend this part here, do the same thing in here. Once I'm happy with that, I just hit apply, A for apply on the keyboard. And so now there's our auto textured grass slope all in a single command. Now I'm going to do another auto texture for our paving. To use paving, and 10 is usually pretty good. I like to make our paving polylines red. And I'm going to pick this parking lot area, and you can see right away that it's picked up all of it. It didn't quite get all of the road because I'm only at 3% here, so I've got a little bit finer control over the points that I pick, and I see that it stops nicely at the end. I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply and accept those. Now we go in and work on this pond, so I'll do another auto texture command this time. We'll use another grass texture. The polyline colors are basically define the tin triangle colors inside. So and the way the auto texturing control works now is that if you pick an area on a particular mesh, we'll only include areas on that mesh in the solution. So one of the things that you can run into is if I had set my slope tolerance too high here, I may have gotten bleed over out into this area. You can control that bleed over by creating a small textured rectangle and dropping a texture onto it, and then any texture that I do to this road is going to get stopped by the grass down at the bottom. But in this case, I'm going to change this to 10%. And so you're seeing where I pick these points, and you're wondering, well, why is this area not 10%? Why is that a 10% slope difference? And you can actually see that there is a little anomaly in here in the surface. So either I could fix the surface, or I can just pick another point on that slope to go ahead and include it with the solution, which is what I did. And again, obviously the same thing happens here. We've got another little anomaly going around this corner. So I can continue doing those picks, which is a little bit more time consuming, or I can try to expand the slope tolerance a little bit here. So by expanding that slope tolerance, what I'm doing is including more area automatically. And so we can see that these two are not quite joined. So I'm going to pick those areas, and I'm also going to pick the areas out here. And again, it looks like we found another one of those fun glitches in the surface. But again, if you roll in tight enough, you can pick those points. And I'll just pull back here a little bit and look at the solution, and I can see that I want to go around here as well. Now I'm suspicious because all of a sudden, you know, I picked this point and I expected a polyline to show up here, and what I can see is I think it's picked a much larger area. Or it thinks that it's not crossing a boundary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo these picks. I'm going to include this area. And it really doesn't like this. But again, this is how auto texturing can help sort of identify and find errors in the surface that are very hard to see in the CAD drawing, and sometimes even very difficult to find in a 3D view as well. So some other things about textures. If you right click over a surface, you can select the texture that's underneath of it. So this is automatically going and finding this grass texture. Why is that interesting? Well, you might want to change the scale, or you might want to actually change that to a different texture altogether. So if we want to make a little stone bottom on that. We could also drag and drop into any of these textured areas a texture from this panel. That's another way to do it, but you get a little bit more control because you can change the scale and whatnot in here. So that's a little bit about auto texturing, and I'm actually going to show, I'm going to start a new scenario. So our old scenario is not gone. I've just created a new scenario, and I'm going to load another surface in here and do a quick example of how to stop the bleed over effect on some of these slopes when you need to pick up more area for a nicer finish. So here I'm going to do another auto texture. I'm going to set this down to 10%, and we're going to go with asphalt here. So pick our paving, back to red. And you notice that I right off, it got all of the road very nicely, but it also just picked up a whole bunch of areas. And it's because of this blending of the slope here is within 10% tolerance, and it keeps tracing and finding these areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit escape and cancel out of the command. And here I'm just going to draw a polyline. See if I get in there a little bit closer. So I can be more precise about it. I'll turn on my node snaps to the 10 faces so that it's stopping exactly at the end of the road. And I'm just going to pick a few points out here and close it. Grab a texture here, drag and drop it. And so what that's going to do, as the slope analysis is coming down here, instead of bleeding over into this area and bleeding back out into here where it finds slopes that are within 10% tolerance, this is going to stop it at this point. So sort of like using temporary geometry in CAD to help you draw, that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. And so now that I'll go ahead and select auto texture again, accept the same parameters that I had before. It picks up my first road. Now I'm going to pick up my second road, and you can see this time it stopped it. And I've gotten my entire road in one nice, well, in 2 mouse picks. So I'm just going to hit apply. And then, of course, like any other construction geometry in CAD, when you don't need it anymore, you just go ahead and delete it. And now I can continue texturing the grass slopes and or dirt, I guess, in this case. So you can see that effect that this 10% is too high for this particular area. And so what we can do is drop that down to 4%. And by dropping this percentage, what that means is you're probably going to have to pick more points on the surface to pick up those additional areas, but you have more precise control over doing that. So again, if I change this to 40%, you see it pretty much just picked the whole surface because it's found a path around there. Drop this down to 25%, a little bit less, down to 10, still looking pretty bad, and back to 4% is actually looking pretty reasonable. Because in most design scenarios, a lot of the breaks are going to be less than 10% in your design. And so in this case, I'm just simply picking areas where I'm going to want to have grass. And in this case, it's stopped giving me grass on the bottom. So I'm going to pick a couple of points in here and pick that up so that this is all one grassy bottom. I'll do the same over here. Pick the bottom, pick the other side. And hit apply. So now we have a bunch of dirt. And in this kind of case, if you want to change the texture for the entire group, you can do that at this high level. So instead of having to go and drag and drop and edit each one, you can pick the collection class itself, and you can modify that and also the resolution of that. And then if you're fairly pleased about the way that your surface looks, you can go in and you can also now turn off the polylines. And so all that does is gives you a little bit cleaner presentation look, if you will, by turning off those texture polylines. And obviously, if we wanted to change our overall background, our famous just add bison, we could just drop that guy in there. And that's it for the sort of the advanced auto texturing command and the new features that we have in P3D Topo release 2016.2 improvements.